Officer James Kelly pulled his police car to the side of the road after his shift ended. The day had been long and difficult. His hands still shook from his argument with his wife that morning, and the coffee in his cup had gone cold hours ago. He rubbed his tired eyes and checked his watch. 9:47 p.m., almost time to go home. That's when he spotted the silver sedan rolling through a stop sign. One more, he muttered to himself, flipping on his lights and pulling out behind the car. The sedan pulled over promptly. Officer Kelly saw a man in a crisp white shirt behind the wheel. He got out of his patrol car, adjusted his belt, and approached the driver's window with his flashlight aimed ahead. "License and registration," Kelly said before the window had fully lowered. The driver, a well-dressed black man in his early 40s, looked up calmly. "Good evening, officer. May I ask why I'm being pulled over?" Something about the man's composed manner irritated Kelly. After the day he'd had, the last thing he wanted was questions. "You rolled through that stop sign back there. License and registration now." The driver kept his hands visible on the steering wheel. "I'm certain I came to a complete stop, officer. Is your dash camera on? Perhaps we could review the footage." Kelly felt heat rising in his neck. His dash camera wasn't working. It hadn't been for weeks. The department kept promising to fix it. "Sir, I'm not going to ask again. Your documents, please." The driver reached slowly for his glove compartment. "I understand you're doing your job, officer, but I would appreciate professional courtesy. My name is Marcus Washington." Kelly didn't recognize the name and didn't care. All he knew was that this man was making a simple traffic stop complicated. His patience, already thin after his long day, snapped. "Listen, I don't care who you are. You don't get to question my authority." Washington sighed and handed over his license and registration. "I'm not questioning your authority, officer. I'm questioning the reason for this stop." As Kelly reviewed the documents, he noticed the address was in the wealthy part of town. This made him even more annoyed. He'd been passed over for promotion twice, while people like this man lived in big houses and questioned his judgment. "Step out of the car," Kelly ordered. "Is that really necessary? I provided my documents." "Out. Now." Kelly's hand moved to rest on his holster, a gesture he knew would end the argument. Washington carefully opened his door and stepped out. He was tall, well-built, and dressed in expensive clothes. He stood with perfect posture, looking directly at Kelly. "Officer, I'd like your badge number and name for my records." The request pushed Kelly over the edge. Without thinking, he spat at Washington's feet. Some of the spittle landed on the man's polished shoes. "There's your record," Kelly sneered. "Now stay right here while I write you up." Washington didn't move or speak. He simply watched Kelly with an unreadable expression. Kelly returned to his patrol car and wrote a citation for running a stop sign and a second one for failure to promptly provide documents. His hand shook as he wrote, part of him knowing he'd gone too far, but pride keeping him from backing down. He handed the tickets to Washington. "Have a nice night," he said with fake politeness. Washington took the tickets without a word. He carefully folded them and placed them in his pocket. "Thank you, Officer Kelly," he said, reading the name from the badge. "I'll see you again soon." Something in Washington's calm certainty made Kelly uncomfortable, but he dismissed it as he got back in his patrol car. Just another traffic stop, he told himself. He'd forget all about it by tomorrow. He had no idea how wrong he was. The next morning, Officer James Kelly walked into the police station with a large coffee in hand. His head pounded from too little sleep. The fight with his wife had continued when he got home, and he'd spent half the night on the couch. "Hey, Kelly, you hear about the meeting?" Officer Rodriguez called from the break room. Kelly shook his head. "What meeting?" "All hands at 9 o'clock. Captain says it's important. They're finally announcing the new chief." Kelly groaned. The department had been without a permanent police chief for 6 months. The last one had retired after a scandal involving missing evidence. Since then, Captain Rodriguez had been acting chief while the city conducted what they called a nationwide search for excellence. "Another suit from out of town who doesn't know how things work here," Kelly muttered. Rodriguez shrugged. "We'll see. Word is, this guy has a good record." Kelly settled at his desk and tried to focus on paperwork. The traffic stop from last night kept replaying in his mind. He knew he'd crossed a line by spitting. In his 12 years on the force, he never done anything like that before. If the guy complained, he could face disciplinary action. At 8:55, officers began filing into the conference room. Kelly took a seat in the back, hoping to remain invisible. The room buzzed with speculation about the new chief. At exactly 9 o'clock, Captain Rodriguez entered, followed by the mayor and a man whose back was turned as he spoke to someone in the hallway. "Attention, everyone," the mayor said, tapping the microphone. "Today marks a new chapter for the Ridgewood Police Department. After an extensive search, we found a leader with the vision and experience to move us forward." Kelly took a sip of coffee and glanced at his phone, only half listening. "He comes to us with impressive credentials," the mayor continued. "A decorated officer with 15 years of experience, advanced degrees in criminal justice and public administration, and successful reform initiatives in 2 previous departments." The man beside the mayor turned to face the room, and Kelly's coffee cup froze halfway to his mouth. It was him, the driver from last night. "Please join me in welcoming your new police chief, Marcus Washington." The room erupted in applause, but Kelly couldn't move. His coffee slipped from his hand, spilling across his uniform pants. He barely noticed the hot liquid soaking through to his skin. Chief Washington scanned the room as he stepped up to the podium. His eyes stopped when they reached Kelly in the back row. A slight smile appeared on Washington's face, not warm, not friendly, just acknowledging. He remembered. "Thank you, Mayor Johnson," Washington began. "I'm honored to join this department and this community. I believe in fair, transparent, and respectful policing. Every citizen deserves dignity in their interactions with law enforcement." His eyes found Kelly again, lingering just long enough to send a clear message. "Starting today, we will review all our procedures and practices. I plan to meet with each of you personally in the coming weeks." Kelly felt the room spinning. Officers around him were nodding and smiling, but all he could think about was the tiny drops of his spit landing on the new chief's shoes. After the meeting, officers lined up to introduce themselves to Chief Washington. Kelly slipped out a side door and hurried to the bathroom. He splashed cold water on his face and stared at his reflection. "You're finished," he whispered to himself. When he returned to his desk, a department-wide email had already arrived. Chief Washington wanted to see Officer James Kelly in his office at 2 p.m. Officer Rodriguez passed by and patted Kelly's shoulder. "Lucky you, getting the first one-on-one with the new boss. Make a good impression." Kelly couldn't even respond. In his mind, he was already clearing out his desk and turning in his badge. The clock on the wall seemed to tick louder than usual, counting down the hours until his career would end. #. Officer James Kelly sat outside Chief Washington's office, checking his watch every 30 seconds. It was 1:55 p.m. 5 more minutes until his career would likely end. News of his meeting with the new chief had spread through the department like wildfire. Most officers just thought he was lucky to get the first meeting. But Officer Sanchez, who had been parked down the street during last night's traffic stop, pulled Kelly aside in the break room. "I saw you with that set in last night," Sanchez had whispered. "That was him, wasn't it? The new chief?" Kelly hadn't answered, but his pale face told Sanchez everything. "Man, you're in trouble," Sanchez said, walking away and shaking his head. Now, sitting outside the chief's office, Kelly's stomach twisted in knots. He'd already called his wife to warn her he might be coming home without a job. She'd sighed deeply and hung up. Officer Kelly called the chief's secretary. "Chief Washington will see you now." Kelly stood on shaky legs and entered the office. Chief Washington sat behind the desk that until yesterday had belonged to Captain Rodriguez. He didn't look up from the file he was reading, Kelly's personnel file. "Sit down," Washington said, his voice calm and professional. Kelly sat, his uniform feeling suddenly too tight around his neck. 12 years on the force," Washington finally said, closing the file. 2 commendations for bravery, decent performance reviews. He looked up at Kelly. And 27 civilian complaints, 17 from black citizens. Kelly opened his mouth, but no words came out. "Last night," Washington continued, "you pulled me over for allegedly running a stop sign. You became aggressive when I asked questions. You ordered me out of my vehicle without cause. And then, Officer Kelly, you spat at me." He leaned forward. "Would you like to explain yourself?" Sir, Kelly's mouth was dry. I had a bad day. It was unprofessional, and I'm sorry. A bad day, Washington repeated, letting the words hang in the air. I've had bad days too, Officer Kelly, but I've never spat on anyone because of them. From outside the office, they heard voices growing louder. The door burst open as Captain Rodriguez entered with Officer Sanchez behind him. Chief, I just heard what happened last night, Rodriguez said. Whatever Kelly did, I'm sure there's an explanation. Washington's expression didn't change. Captain, did I invite you into this meeting? Rodriguez stopped short. No, sir, but... Then please wait outside until I call for you. Washington's tone left no room for argument. After they left, Washington turned back to Kelly. Word travels fast here. Sir, please, Kelly said, finding his voice. I have a family, a mortgage. This job is all I have. And you should have thought about that before you decided to spit on a citizen, Washington replied. I could fire you right now, and it would be completely justified. Kelly felt the room closing in around him. This was it. However, Washington continued, I'm not going to do that. Yet. Kelly looked up, surprised. You're suspended for 2 weeks without pay, effective immediately. When you return, you'll be on probation for 6 months. During that time, you'll attend sensitivity training and community outreach programs. One more incident like last night, and you're done. Is that clear? Yes, sir, Kelly said, relief flooding through him. Thank you. Don't thank me, Washington said. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because firing you on my first day would divide this department when I need it united. He stood up. Turn in your badge and gun on your way out. As Kelly left the office, he found a small crowd of officers waiting nearby, pretending to be busy with paperwork. They watched as he emptied his weapon and placed it, along with his badge, on the secretary's desk. 2 weeks, Rodriguez whispered as Kelly passed. You got lucky. But looking at the faces of his fellow officers, some sympathetic, others carefully blank, Kelly didn't feel lucky at all. Something had changed in the department, and he knew things would never be the same again. Outside the station, dark clouds gathered overhead. As the first drops of rain began to fall, Kelly realized he had a long walk home to think about everything that had happened. By the end of Officer Kelly's first week of suspension, the whole town of Ridgewood knew about the incident. A cell phone video taken by a passing driver had surfaced online. The grainy footage showed just enough: Kelly's aggressive stance, the spit, the smirk as he walked away. The video ended before showing Washington's face, preserving his anonymity to those who didn't already know. The local newspaper ran the headline, Officer Suspended After Spitting Incident, New Chief Takes Swift Action. Social media buzzed with opinions. Some praised Washington for his measured response. Others called for Kelly to be fired immediately. At the police station, Chief Washington had ordered a full review of Kelly's past cases. Detective Maria Gonzalez sat surrounded by files in a small conference room, her coffee long cold. Find anything? Captain Rodriguez asked, poking his head in. Gonzalez pushed a file toward him. 3 excessive force complaints from black men in the last year alone, all dismissed by Internal Affairs. Rodriguez frowned. I signed off on those dismissals. There wasn't enough evidence. Maybe we weren't looking hard enough, Gonzalez replied. She had never liked Kelly, finding him arrogant and quick-tempered. Chief Washington wants a full report by Monday. Meanwhile, Kelly sat at his kitchen table, bills spread before him. 2 weeks without pay would hurt, but it was better than losing his job entirely. His wife, Sarah, entered carrying their sleeping 3-year-old daughter. She asked why Daddy's home all day. Sarah said quietly, I didn't know what to tell her. Kelly couldn't meet her eyes. I messed up, Sarah. I saw the video. Her voice was flat. My mother called to ask if I was married to that racist cop from the news. I'm not racist, Kelly protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Then why, James? Why did you do it? He had asked himself the same question all week. I don't know. He was so confident. Like he was better than me. It made me angry. Sarah shook her head and carried their daughter upstairs. Across town, Chief Washington sat in his new home, still half unpacked. His wife, Diane, joined him on the couch. How's it going at the station? She asked. Challenging, Washington replied. Half the department thinks I'm being too harsh on Kelly. The other half thinks I'm not being harsh enough. And what do you think? Washington considered the question. I think Kelly is a symptom of a bigger problem. His file shows a pattern, and the department looked the other way for years. Can you change that? I have to try, he said. That's why they hired me. The next morning, Detective Gonzalez knocked on Washington's office door with her final report. It's worse than we thought, Chief, she said, placing a thick folder on his desk. I found 8 cases where Kelly's body camera mysteriously malfunctioned during encounters with minority suspects. 3 resulted in hospital visits for the suspects. Washington reviewed the cases carefully, and Internal Affairs found nothing wrong. They barely looked, Gonzalez admitted. The previous chief, he liked to keep things quiet. That ends now, Washington said firmly. Later that day, Washington called an emergency meeting with the mayor and the city's legal counsel. Based on our investigation, Officer Kelly's behavior shows a clear pattern of bias, Washington explained. I recommend extending his suspension pending further review. The mayor looked troubled. The police union won't like that. They're already calling your first decision an overreaction. With respect, Mayor, I wasn't hired to please the union. I was hired to ensure this department serves all citizens equally. As they debated, Officer Sanchez stopped by Kelly's house with an update. They're digging through everything, man, Sanchez told him. Gonzalez is leading the investigation, and she's always had it out for you. Kelly paced his living room. It was one mistake. Everyone's acting like I'm some kind of monster. It's not just about the spitting anymore, Sanchez replied. They're looking at all your old cases. After Sanchez left, Kelly stared at his reflection in the window. For the first time, he began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, he had been wrong about more than just that one night. 2 weeks passed, and Officer Kelly's suspension was extended indefinitely. Each morning, he woke up to the same empty routine. No uniform, no badge, no purpose. His wife had taken their daughter to stay with her parents, saying they needed space to think. The investigation into his past cases continued. Each day brought new revelations about his conduct that even Kelly couldn't defend. Sitting alone in his house, he began to see a pattern he had never noticed before. On a rainy Tuesday morning, Kelly's phone rang. It was Chief Washington's secretary. Chief Washington would like to see you tomorrow at 10 a.m., she said. Her voice was professional but cold. Kelly barely slept that night. By morning, dark circles had formed under his eyes. He put on his best suit, the one he'd worn to his wedding, and drove to the station. Officers he had worked with for years looked away as he passed. Only Rodriguez nodded in greeting, a small gesture that meant more to Kelly than he could express. Chief Washington's office door was open. Kelly knocked anyway. Come in, Officer Kelly, Washington said, rising from his desk. Close the door behind you. Kelly did as instructed. This time, there was another chair in front of Washington's desk, not the hard plastic one from before, but a comfortable armchair. Washington gestured for him to sit. I've read the complete report on your past cases, Washington began. I've also watched every available body camera footage from your shifts over the past year. Kelly stared at his hands. And now you're going to fire me. I haven't decided yet, Washington replied. First, I want to talk, not as chief and officer, but as 2 men. Washington moved from behind his desk and sat in the chair next to Kelly. Without the desk between them, Kelly felt exposed. Do you know why I became a police officer? Washington asked. Kelly shook his head. My brother was killed during a traffic stop when I was 16, Washington said quietly. The officer claimed he saw a gun. There was no gun, just a cell phone. No charges were ever filed against the officer. Kelly shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I could have grown up hating police, Washington continued. Instead, I decided to become the kind of officer my brother deserved that night. He leaned forward. When you pulled me over and spat on me, do you know what I felt? Anger? Kelly guessed. Sadness, Washington corrected. Because in that moment, nothing had changed since my brother died. 25 years of progress, and I was still just a black man being degraded by someone with power. For the first time, Kelly looked directly at Washington. I didn't spit on you because you're black, he said. Didn't you? Washington's eyes held his. The investigation shows you've had similar incidents with other black citizens, never with white ones. Kelly wanted to argue but found he couldn't. The evidence was too clear. I never thought of myself as... Kelly couldn't finish the sentence. Few people do, Washington said. Racism isn't always burning crosses and white hoods. Sometimes it's small decisions we don't even realize we're making. Kelly felt something crack inside him, a wall he had built long ago. I don't want to be that person, he said, his voice barely audible. Washington nodded. That's a start. He returned to his desk and picked up a folder. I have two options for you, Officer Kelly. Option 1. Termination, effective immediately. Kelly held his breath. Option 2. 6 months unpaid leave. During that time, you'll complete an intensive bias training program, work 20 hours a week at the community center in the East Side neighborhood, and meet weekly with a counselor. After 6 months, if your supervisors give positive reports, you'll be reinstated at a lower rank with a 1-year probation period. Why would you give me a second chance? Kelly asked, genuinely confused. Washington looked at him steadily. Because firing you is easy. Changing you, and this department, is harder, but more important. He slid a paper across the desk. You have until tomorrow to decide. As Kelly left the station, the rain had stopped. For the first time in weeks, he felt something close to hope. Chief Washington's office was packed with people. On one side stood Captain Rodriguez and 3 representatives from the police union, their faces stern and arms crossed. On the other side were community leaders, including Pastor Johnson from the East Side Baptist Church and Dr. Maya Reed, head of the local NAACP chapter. In the middle sat Chief Washington, calm despite the tension filling the room. Chief, you can't possibly be considering keeping Kelly on the force, Dr. Reed said, her voice tight with anger. That video shows clear racial bias. Our community deserves better. Union Representative Mike Collins leaned forward. Kelly has 12 years of service. One mistake shouldn't end his career. The punishment you're suggesting is already too harsh. Washington listened as the two sides argued back and forth. The debate had been going on for 20 minutes, and neither side showed signs of backing down. Outside the station, a small group of protesters held signs reading, "Fire Kelly now," and "No badge for bigots." Local news vans waited for Washington's decision. Meanwhile, Officer Kelly sat in his car in the parking lot, watching the protesters through his windshield. He had spent a sleepless night thinking about Washington's offer. His wife had called, and they had talked for hours. By morning, he knew his answer, but seeing the protesters made his stomach tighten. Back in the office, Pastor Johnson spoke up. If Kelly stays, what message does that send to our youth? That police can disrespect us without consequences. And if we fire every officer who makes a mistake, who will be left to serve? Rodriguez countered. Washington raised his hand, and the room fell silent. I've heard your concerns, he said. But this isn't a democracy. The decision is mine alone, and I've made it. He pressed a button on his phone. Send him in, he told his secretary. Kelly entered, feeling all eyes on him. His face burned with shame as he recognized Dr. Reed, who had spoken at community meetings he'd attended, meetings where he'd sat in the back, bored and dismissive. Officer Kelly, Washington said formally, have you made your decision regarding my offer? Kelly straightened his shoulders. Yes, sir, I accept option 2. The leave, the training, all of it. A murmur ran through the room. Collins looked relieved, while Dr. Reed shook her head in disappointment. Very well, Washington said. Before I make my final decision, do you have anything to say to the people in this room? Kelly hadn't expected this. He looked around at the faces, some hostile, some supportive, all waiting for his words. He had prepared nothing. He began, then stopped. He took a deep breath. What I did was wrong. Not just that night, but many times before. I've spent 2 weeks reading my own reports, watching my own body camera footage. I didn't like what I saw. The room was completely silent now. I never thought of myself as prejudiced. Kelly continued, his voice growing stronger. But my actions tell a different story. I can't change what I've done, but I can change what I do from now on. He turned to Dr. Reed and Pastor Johnson. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want a chance to be better. Washington studied Kelly's face, looking for any sign of insincerity. Finding none, he nodded. "Here is my decision," Washington announced. "Officer James Kelly will be placed on 6 months unpaid leave. During this time, he will complete the bias training program, work at the East Side Community Center, and attend weekly counseling. At the community center, you will work directly under Pastor Johnson's supervision." Pastor Johnson's eyebrows shot up in surprise. Additionally, Washington continued, "We will implement a new department-wide training program on bias and community relations. Captain Rodriguez will oversee this program, with input from Dr. Reed and other community leaders." He stood up. "This isn't just about one officer or one incident. It's about changing our entire department. Officer Kelly's case is simply where we start." As the meeting ended, people filed out with mixed reactions. Dr. Reed approached Kelly. "I don't trust you," she said bluntly. "But I respect that you're willing to try. Don't waste this opportunity." Kelly nodded, understanding that the hardest part of his journey was just beginning. Outside, Washington faced the reporters and protesters, ready to announce his decision to the waiting town. 3 months into his unpaid leave, Officer James Kelly stood in the East Side Community Center gym, surrounded by teenage boys holding basketballs. His first day here had been a disaster. The teens had recognized him from the viral video and refused to participate in his program. "You're that cop who spits on people," one boy had said, walking out. Now, on a hot summer afternoon, those same boys watched as Kelly demonstrated a passing drill. Things had changed, slowly but surely. "Marcus, keep your eyes up when you dribble," Kelly called to a tall, skinny 14-year-old. "Deshaun, good defense." After practice, Kelly sat on the bleachers with Pastor Johnson, who supervised his community service. "The boys are warming up to you," the pastor observed. Kelly nodded, "some of them, anyway." "It takes time to build trust," Pastor Johnson said, "especially when trust has been broken." Kelly thought about his weekly counseling sessions, where he'd been forced to confront uncomfortable truths about himself. His counselor, Dr. Torres, had helped him trace his biases back to his childhood in a neighborhood that had changed from mostly white to mostly black during his teenage years. "My father always locked the car doors when we drove through certain areas," Kelly had admitted during one session. "I never questioned why." Across town at the police station, Chief Washington was facing challenges of his own. The new training programs had met with resistance from older officers who saw them as a waste of time. "We're cops, not social workers," Officer Miller had complained during one session. Washington had remained firm. "We're public servants first, law enforcement second. If you can't embrace that order, maybe it's time to reconsider your career." 3 officers had resigned in protest, but others, including Captain Rodriguez, had surprised Washington with their willingness to change. Rodriguez now knocked on Washington's door with the latest statistics. "Civilian complaints are down 30% since you took over," Rodriguez reported. "And arrests in minority neighborhoods have decreased while successful prosecutions have increased." Washington nodded, pleased but not satisfied. "We're making progress. How's our community outreach program going?" "Better than expected," Rodriguez said. "That neighborhood watch program Dr. Reed suggested is working well." Dr. Reed had been skeptical of Washington's decision regarding Kelly, but she had agreed to help with department reforms. Her expertise had proven invaluable. Back at the community center, Kelly was cleaning up after the basketball program when Deshaun, one of the more hostile teens, stayed behind. "My brother got arrested last year," Deshaun said suddenly. "He wasn't doing nothing wrong, just standing outside our building. Cop said he fit a description." Kelly stopped sweeping. "I'm sorry that happened." "Would you have done the same thing?" Deshaun asked. "Before all this, I mean." The question hit Kelly hard. 6 months ago, he might have defended the officer without question. Now, he wasn't so sure. "Maybe," he admitted. "And that would have been wrong." Deshaun studied him for a long moment. "You're different from how I thought cops were." "I'm learning to be different from how I was," Kelly replied. That evening, Kelly drove home to find his wife and daughter waiting. Sarah had moved back in a month ago, cautiously optimistic about the changes she'd seen in her husband. "How was your day?" she asked as their daughter climbed into his lap. "Good," Kelly said, I think I'm finally getting through to some of the kids. And the bias training program? You have another session tomorrow, right? Kelly nodded. The program was intensive and often uncomfortable, forcing him to examine beliefs he'd never questioned before. It's hard, he admitted, but necessary. Later that night, Kelly checked his email to find a message from Chief Washington requesting a meeting the following week to discuss his progress. Despite the positive reports from Pastor Johnson and Dr. Torres, Kelly felt nervous. 3 months remained in his probationary period, and his future was still uncertain. As he closed his laptop, Kelly realized something surprising. Regardless of whether he returned to the force, the work he was doing now felt more meaningful than anything he'd done with a badge. For the first time in months, he slept without nightmares. The town hall meeting room was packed. After 6 months of reforms in the Ridgewood Police Department, Chief Washington had organized a community forum to discuss the changes and hear feedback from citizens. At the back of the room, James Kelly stood nervously in his uniform, his badge newly returned, but now displaying a different rank. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Chief Washington said from the podium. 6 months ago, I promised changes in how our police department serves this community. Tonight, I want to share our progress and hear your thoughts. Slides appeared on the screen behind him showing decreased arrest rates, increased community engagement, and fewer civilian complaints. Washington credited the new training programs and community partnerships for these improvements. In the audience, Dr. Reed nodded with cautious approval. Beside her sat Pastor Johnson, who had become a regular presence at the station, leading weekly discussions between officers and community members. And now, Washington continued, I'd like to introduce Officer James Kelly, who has recently completed our new intensive training program. A murmur spread through the crowd as Kelly walked to the front of the room. Some people recognized him from the video that had circulated months ago. Others knew him from his work at the community center. Kelly's mouth felt dry as he faced the audience. 6 months ago, he would have rather faced an armed suspect than speak openly about his feelings. Now, he took a deep breath and began. "Many of you know me as the officer from that video," he said, his voice steady despite his nerves. "The officer who disrespected a citizen who turned out to be my new boss." A few uncomfortable laughs rippled through the crowd. "What you may not know is how that moment changed my life." Kelly looked at Washington, who gave him an encouraging nod. "For 12 years, I thought I was a good cop. I was wrong. A good cop serves everyone equally. I didn't do that." In the third row, Kelly spotted Deshawn and some other teens from the community center. They watched him with serious expressions. "The past 6 months have been the hardest of my life," Kelly continued. "I've had to face ugly truths about myself and my actions. I've had to unlearn habits and attitudes I didn't even know I had." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I'm not asking for praise or forgiveness. I'm just telling you that people can change when they're held accountable and given the chance to learn. I'm still learning, and I will be for the rest of my career." When Kelly finished speaking, the room was quiet. Then Pastor Johnson stood up and began to clap. Slowly, others joined in, not thunderous applause, but a respectful acknowledgement of honesty. After the meeting, as people mingled and talked, a local reporter approached Washington and Kelly. "Chief Washington, many departments would have fired Officer Kelly after that incident. Why did you choose a different approach?" Washington considered the question. Because firing one officer doesn't fix a broken system. Real change requires honest reflection and hard work. He looked at Kelly. Officer Kelly was willing to do that work. "And Officer Kelly," the reporter turned, "how do you feel about working under the man you once disrespected?" Kelly met Washington's gaze. There was no friendship between them. That would take more time, if it ever came, but there was respect. "I'm grateful," Kelly answered simply. "Chief Washington could have ended my career. Instead, he made me a better officer." As the reporter moved away, Deshawn approached Kelly. "My brother's thinking about that police cadet program you told us about," he said. "He says maybe not all cops are bad." Kelly felt a surge of emotion. "That's good to hear." Later that night, as Kelly drove home to his family, he passed the spot where he had pulled Washington over 6 months ago. So much had changed since that night. The department, the community, and most of all, himself. He still had bad days. He still made mistakes. But now, when he put on his uniform each morning, he asked himself a question Chief Washington had taught him. Who am I serving today? The answer, he now understood, was everyone.